Our protagonist, a man of exceptional talent in swordsmanship, mastered every technique and skill with ease. There was nothing he couldn't learn, and no opponent who could escape his blade. Through relentless effort, he became unstoppable. After dropping out of high school, our boy dedicated 20 years to honing his skills with a knife, eventually becoming the finest swordsman in the country. In a bustling restaurant, the staff managed the crowd when suddenly, the chef's phone alarm catches their attention. A staff member mentions it, and the chef realizes he must have set it to vibrate. Seeing the notification, he briefly wonders if it's from the game he deleted earlier, assuming his phone is malfunctioning. At that moment, another staff member informs him that a guest has arrived. The chef instructs them to tell the guest he isn't available. However, Mr. Kim, the guest, doesn't wait. He walks into the kitchen himself, dismissing the chef's excuse as an obvious lie. Mr. Kim declares it's time to hear the answer he's come for. He believes he's given the chef enough time to consider the request, and it shouldn't be difficult for someone like our boy, who handles swords every day. Realizing he might have come off as insensitive, Mr. Kim opens a suitcase full of cash as a show of sincerity. He explains that he's offering an advance payment of $300 million if our boy can complete the task. However, the chef swiftly cuts through the meat, startling everyone. He firmly states that this is a kitchen where cleanliness is paramount, and there's no place for someone like Kim. Our boy orders Mr. Kim to leave. The guest becomes furious, exclaiming that a sword saint shouldn't be cutting fish in a place like this. In response, the chef grabs a kitchen knife, further intimidating Kim. As Kim retreats, he tells our boy that he's not giving up and will definitely return soon. After Mr. Kim and his guards depart, one of the staff members remarks that the chef was being offered $300 million. He adds that if it were him, he would have accepted the offer immediately and asks why our boy turned it down. The chef replies that all his life, he's only ever sliced fish heads with a knife. He knows nothing about being a thug. The staff member suggests that the chef could leverage his reputation as a sword master to intimidate people without actually harming anyone and still collect the money. With that, he could buy a house. Our boy replies that he would decline the offer, even if someone offered him billions. Curious about the notifications, the staff member wonders if the chef is dating someone. But our boy dismisses it, explaining it's just a stupid game, though he's too embarrassed to admit he's still playing Divine Protection. The boss calls for the cleaning guy, who leaves first, while our boy reflects on his past. He remembers how his family went bankrupt when he was young, forcing him to work tirelessly and focus his life solely on making money. His phone keeps ringing, with the frequency becoming excessive. He decides to reinstall the game, realizing that the characters have been invading the academy for years. He taps the notifications, and a prompt to touch the screen appears. Hearing the nostalgic soundtrack and seeing the female characters still as beautiful as before, he feels a wave of familiarity. To our boy's surprise, the mobile screen froze, and then suddenly, a bright light emerged from the phone. The same staff member from earlier calls out to him, saying the boss is asking for him. The staff member notices that the chef is gone and wonders why he left his phone behind. The boss calls again, and the staff member speculates that the chef might have gone to the restroom. Meanwhile, the phone screen shows the completion of the transfer. Upon seeing the game, our boy immediately recognizes it as a typical pay-to-win model with a standard auto-hunting system, just like countless mass-produced mobile games. No further explanation is needed. He originally played the game because he was captivated by the appearance of the female characters and got drawn into it. Now, he finds it ironic that after spending a fortune and playing through multiple cycles, he's neither a playable character nor an NPC. He's become a background character, whose whereabouts are completely unknown. Our boy has possessed this character, and in this new world, his name is Kongjiyama. While walking, he accidentally bumps into a woman, and they both apologize. He notices that the setting of Divine Protection M resembles Korea. The names, locations, and geography are only slightly altered, with a few minor character variations. Thanks to this, Kong adapts quickly. A whole year passes, and now he's living as a teenager, unsure whether this is real or just part of the game. For him, it's a life he can't fully enjoy, much like his previous one, until that fateful day arrives. Returning from school, his parents proudly address him as the great sword master Kong, calling him their pride. They see his acceptance letter, and embarrassed, our boy asks them to put it away. His parents, beaming with pride, say they've raised him well and can't stop feeling proud every time they look at the letter. As he starts sweating, they remind him that the entrance ceremony is tomorrow and ask if he's packed everything. Pushed by their excitement, he begins packing, realizing that his modest dream of living a normal life has been shattered once again. Everyone's joy makes it impossible for him to refuse. He had tried to avoid the ceremony several times but couldn't, leaving him already exhausted. While packing, our boy stumbles upon a family photo and wonders how the Kong he possessed managed to get accepted into such a prestigious school. He recalls how things unfolded and remembers his parents telling him that last year he manifested divine powers and took the entrance exam immediately. Shocked, he realizes that before he possessed Kong, the boy had already unlocked divine powers and passed the entrance exam for Hawk Academy. It dawns on him that his character is a genius. He begins to understand that divine powers are special abilities, similar to skills in a game, but not everyone possesses them. These powers typically manifest through genetics, and based on whether one has divine power, society is divided into 3 classes: the privileged, the commoners, and the poor. Hawk Academy, where Kong was admitted, was originally founded to preserve the power of the elite, though it was established under the guise of a hero civilization. Today, it serves as an exclusive school for upper-class families. Recently, however, a system known as special admission was introduced for non-hero families, and the character our boy possesses was admitted as one of these special students. He also understands that heroes are essential because of the threat posed by the Demon King. Yet, despite all this, he knows this isn't reality. It's just a training ground preparing students for war. Our boy speaks aloud, saying, "Divine power," and a status window appears, still unfamiliar to him. He sees the divine power he's unlocked and notices a skill called Painlessness, which has a 12-hour cooldown. He scoffs, calling it nonsense. Then, his attention shifts to the divine power granted to him upon possessing Kong, the blessing of the Sword God. With such power, he assumes no one will dare challenge him. It's a divine ability he's never encountered in the game before, and the name contrasts sharply with its overly simple effect. The power allows him to slash anything he cuts, but he finds it absurd to label such an obvious trait as a divine power. What feels even more out of place is the activation condition. His sword must be exactly 30 centimeters in length and less than 5 centimeters in width. He realizes it's the precise size of a sashimi knife, leaving him completely baffled. As the absurdity of it all sinks in, our boy concludes once again that life rarely goes the way he expects. He double-checks his packing and realizes he forgot his equipment. Our boy knows that even the lowest-grade E-rank equipment costs tens of millions, while average seating costs hundreds of millions. So, A and S-rank items must be treasures in themselves. He understands that the tuition alone is exorbitant, and he doesn't want to spend more money on something he's being forced into. However, since the academy requires equipment, he has to bring something or risk making a bad impression on his first day. With that in mind, he decides to head to Daixo to purchase a weapon. His thoughts are interrupted by a memory of his first master, who insisted on using a Japanese sashimi knife worth over 100 million. Suddenly, our boy finds himself thinking about that old man again, recalling his words, "A true master never blames their equipment." The next day, dressed in his uniform and entering the academy, someone questions whether the equipment he's carrying really belongs to him. During the entrance ceremony and the equipment inspection, he pulls out the sashimi knife as his weapon. Every year, the upper-class students play pranks to assert dominance from the start, and the student inspecting him asks if our boy thinks the academy is a joke, seriously questioning his decision to use a kitchen knife for the class placement test. Our boy simply replies that it's his weapon and clarifies that he's a special admission student from a modest family. He explains that the tuition alone was already a huge burden on his parents, so he couldn't justify adding the cost of an expensive weapon on top of that. The instructor glances at the color of his name tag and understands that, for a student not from an upper-class background, the academy's fees would indeed be overwhelming. He feels it would be wrong for an institution supposedly promoting equal education to push away such a sincere student. Our boy adds one more thing. Blaming equipment is something only amateurs do. A master never blames their tools. The instructor finds it odd for a teenage boy to say something so profound, yet it feels as though he's already reached some kind of pinnacle in life. The weight of his eloquent words and his unyielding spirit convince the instructor that this boy is the real deal. He approves Kong Jiama's weapon. Grateful, our boy thanks him, while the students behind him recognize him as a special admission student. They whisper among themselves, wondering how someone like him ended up in such a prestigious academy. The instructor from earlier quickly tells them to be quiet, warning that after the evaluation, depending on their actions, he can either be their angel or their devil. Hearing this, our boy and decides to step outside for a break. He finds a bench and reflects on how, even though he expected this, experiencing it firsthand is still unsettling. Kong has completed the equipment inspection and survived the entrance ceremony. Now, all that's left is the class placement exam. As he sits there, he contemplates his situation, realizing he's truly made it to this school, Joaquin Academy, also known as the Hero Training School, where he will be studying for the next 3 years. He notes how different the academy looks compared to the graphics in the game. If he had to exaggerate, he'd say the academy is the size of a small town, which is impressive. Attending a school meant for the upper class feels surreal, especially since he had to drop out of high school due to family circumstances in his previous life. Soon, the class placement test is announced, and students are instructed to gather at the training hall by 1 p.m. He understands that while the entrance ceremony is over, the class placement test remains incredibly important. Since an exam is still an exam, he knows he must familiarize himself with the process. Looking at his knife, he realizes that ever since coming to this world, he hasn't had a reason to use it. He remembers his master's advice: never put the knife down, even for a single day. Even while you sleep, keep holding it. Kong feels as though he's unconsciously adopting yet another habit from his master. After 20 years of living by the knife, he wonders whether a 1-year break has dulled his skills. He removes the cover from the knife and finds it far better than he expected. Curious, he decides to test it by cutting a leaf. Suddenly, the system alerts him that the weapon has met the activation conditions, and the blessing of the sword god is activated. However, since both his physical body and the weapon are at too low a level, the system initiates suppression to synchronize with the user. Shocked, our boy can't believe that simply drawing the knife triggered the blessing to activate. As the synchronization completes, the system wishes him the blessing of the god. Before he can process this, extreme pain strikes his entire body, and he realizes that if this continues, he's going to die. Suddenly, he finds himself in a new space and, confused, questions where he is. Panicking, he throws the knife away, and instantly, the surroundings return to normal, bringing him back to reality. His body still throbs with pain, and while he understands the activation of divine power, he wonders if the chaos surrounding him is linked to the sword god's blessing. The backlash is unbearable, and although the divine power of painlessness offers some relief from mild soreness, it can't alleviate this kind of agony. Our boy realizes that using his skill in this manner is unsustainable if every activation brings such pain. At that moment, the system sends out a reminder for all students to gather at the hall immediately. He knows it's time for the test and, unwilling to leave the divine weapon lying on the ground, he reluctantly decides to pick it up, assuming the pain was only a consequence of the first activation. As soon as his fingers touch the blade, his body is racked with extreme pain once again. Meanwhile, at the training hall, all the students have gathered while parents chat about the exorbitant cost of admission. Suddenly, their attention shifts to Lord Clinge, the 7-star hero and descendant of Aaron Nibelung, as well as the direct disciple of the founding hero, Valor Joaquin. Known as the strongest human, Lord Clinge's presence commands the crowd, and everyone returns to their seats. The 7-star hero sage greets him and playfully remarks that it's been half a century since they last met. Despite the years, she hasn't begun dressing like an academy director, and turning 70 doesn't seem to have affected her much. She quips that every woman wants to remain beautiful until her last day and offers to use her blessings to make Siegfried look 10 years younger. Siegfried, however, dismisses her offer, pointing out that while she approaches 70, she still hasn't matured. adding that humans should prioritize their inner nature. With a mocking grin, she calls him an old, amused by the fact that he's just as rigid as he was 50 years ago. Siegfried, clearly irritated, does not hide his annoyance. Media, on the other hand, teasingly, she assumes his granddaughter must be quite beautiful, and they both realize the test is about to begin. Inside the training hall, our boy scans the room, noting that he is the only one with black hair. Someone mutters if he is the black-haired foreigner, as the earlier chatter echoes in Kang's mind. Suddenly, a striking girl enters the hall, capturing the attention of every student, including our boy. She is none other than Abel von Nibelung, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor and the main heroine of the game. The sole reason our boy spent a fortune on it. The subspace was created by the ancestral hero Barol Joaquin, who established this reality alongside the Academy. It is a dimension separate from the real world, where pain and damage are real, but no consequences apply to reality since there is no interference from the outside world. Even taking down someone is overlooked. Siegfried and Media discuss the subspace battles, a school tradition, but this year, they are trying something new with a battle royale format. Participants will be split into groups of 10, and it will be a survival game with no restrictions on equipment. Siegfried notes that without restrictions, the privileged students will have an unfair advantage. Media explains that they had to compromise, as the Academy is funded mostly by the nobility, and she fought hard to introduce this new system. Inside the training hall, students admire the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, while our boy is shocked to see that she is no longer just a 2D character. This feels completely different. He inwardly calls the students fools for trying to approach her, but admits he might have done the same if he didn't already know better. Since he has played the game before, he knows that Abel possesses the miracle blessing M, which ties her to the game's protagonist. Beautiful people always seem to have someone by their side, and he realizes that, as a special student, he doesn't belong in their league. He resolves to avoid getting involved, hoping to escape a noisy school life. He sets 3 principles for his future: to finish his studies without incident, secure a conventional job, and live a safe life. He recalls that the hero's job comes with a substantial salary, but just the act of drawing a knife left his body trembling. He's still shaking. Let the hero protect the world, he thinks, while he searches for a more comfortable job. The class assignment exam for the 783rd year at Hoakin Academy begins, and a mini floating machine explains the rules. This year, as previously announced, it will be a battle royale among 10 randomly assigned cadets. First place will be assigned to the Star class, second and third places to the Dragon class, while 8th to 10th places will be assigned to the Ordinary class. Class assignments will be based entirely on these results, with no time limit. Our boy immediately recognizes the setup. It's just like the game. Knowing his goal is to remain ordinary, he decides not to waste time and aims to finish quickly. The subspace generation device activates, and the exam begins. He resolves to avoid drawing his knife unless absolutely necessary. After a while, the evaluations for Group 24 are completed and announced. Soon after, Group 47's evaluation is completed as well. While observing the results, Media mentions to Siegfried that his granddaughter, with the bloodline of Changseong and Jialgung, is sure to achieve significant results. She notes that a time of 7 minutes and 14 seconds is incredibly fast. Abel, wanting a fair assessment, used a C-rank weapon to achieve the record, placing her among the top 10 in Academy history, although she couldn't break Siegfried's own record. Siegfried acknowledges this is natural for someone of the Nibelung bloodline and prepares to leave, assuming the event is over. Media informs him that there is still one group left, but he dismisses it as unimportant. Just as he is about to leave, a sudden, strange sensation washes over everyone. Media questions whether Siegfried felt it as well, to which he responds that it is unbelievable. As they try to make sense of the situation, something suddenly falls from the sky. To their shock, they witness the sky itself break apart, and 2 students emerge from the subspace. The entire crowd is confused, but then another light shines, and a knife falls from the sky as well. Media quickly calls for medical staff to check the vitals of the cadets who have just appeared. One of the fallen students is our boy, and as he lies there, he accepts the results as inevitable, predetermined from the start. Earlier, the students in the last group began fighting each other, and our boy realizes with dread that he has been caught in a squad of death. He recognizes the infamous twins of malevolence, Mao Jun and Mao Shun, from the Iron King family. While these brothers possess immense talent and innate ability, they are also known for their brutal violence and boundless cruelty. Kong recalls that they deliberately toy with everyone for 30 minutes. Our boy is completely ignored by the twins, realizing he is so insignificant to them that he is not even worth their attention. Once the twins finish beating the other students, they ask each other how many remain. Jun states that it's all over, while Shun, surprised, notes that he took care of 4 students. Jun allows Shun to handle the last remaining girl, and Shun eagerly accepts. The girl trembles in fear as she watches them approach. Our boy feels a surge of frustration as he notices that the girl is already panicked and seemingly lacks the will to fight. Shun, seeing her fear, comments that she is just his type. Just as Shun is about to attack the frightened girl, our boy can no longer remain silent. He screams, questioning why they are going so far when it's just subspace, calling them psychopaths for their cruelty. Without fully realizing it, he steps into the chaos. The twins turn their attention to him, noticing his special student tag. They call him a lowlife, and Shun decides to deal with him personally. Jun instructs his brother to take down anyone who dares to disrespect them. Our boy, panicking, wonders what he should do. He considers using his blessing of painlessness, but knows that avoiding pain for just 30 seconds won't help against opponents who have been brutalizing their classmates for 30 minutes. Spotting a sword, Kong hesitates, aware that if he grabs it, the blessing will activate. He recalls the intense pain he felt earlier when using the blade. He had just set out principles for an ordinary, uneventful life. Yet not half a day has passed, and he is already on the verge of breaking them. The twins notice him holding the knife and taunt him, asking if he is mocking them. The terrified girl watches, worried for him, as Shun prepares to finish Kong off painlessly, finding him amusing. He charges at Kong headfirst, ready to smash him. Our boy realizes he can't afford to be picky now. He decides to use the blessing of painlessness for 30 seconds, hoping it will buy him some time. As he takes a fighting stance, the blessing of the sword god activates. His plan is to endure the pain caused by the blessing while fending off Shun. Shun scoffs, asking what a pathetic knife could possibly do. Kong knows that if he doesn't finish off his enemy quickly, he will be the one to die. He feels the absurdity of holding a sashimi knife, intended for cutting fish. He recalls his boss once saying that it's merely a cinematic trope. Such knives would never work against people, even if wielded by a god. Yet, he remembers a skill. If he strikes, it will certainly slash the enemy. As Shun closes in, Kong swiftly slashes with the knife, injuring the bully's arm in one decisive strike. The battle concludes in an instant. In his previous life, he recalls asking his boss why gangsters use sashimi knives. The boss clarifies that he should not refer to him as boss, but rather as master, and questions why our boy is curious about this. He remembers that his first master was a former thug who, as an act of atonement, cut off one of his wrists and later opened a sashimi restaurant, stating that he wanted to bring joy to others with his knife skills. Our boy recalls his master's skills being genuinely impressive and asks why gangsters in movies always wield sashimi knives, wondering if it is the same in real life. His master responds that someone with a fair amount of knife experience should not be asking such questions. Our boy explains that if someone is stabbed with a wide chef's knife, the skin will immediately contract, potentially making it difficult to withdraw. In contrast, a sashimi knife is too narrow, allowing it to stab multiple times and be easily retracted. However, there is no need for stabbing, as it is primarily used for slicing fish. He questions why he cannot do the same with people. His master, annoyed, explains that fish lie flat, and if they were standing, he wouldn't even be able to slice a piece of bread in one go. Our boy is disappointed because in manga, it always looks like a clean slice every time. He assumes his boss simply lacks the skill, but his boss, angered, insists on being called master, and makes it clear that even if the god of knives appeared, it still wouldn't work. In the present moment, our boy instantly takes down Shun, surprising everyone. The bully screams in extreme pain, telling Kong to stay away as he tries to run, begging his brother for help. He cries out in agony, demanding his older brother save him. However, our boy shows no mercy and finishes him off with a single decisive strike. Shocked by what he's seeing, Jun tries to calm himself, reminding himself that it's just a void space and his brother isn't truly dead. Even though this is true, he can't help but wonder what's wrong with Kong. It seems as though our boy has used the knife to take down someone for the first time. Jun's breathing becomes ragged as he questions whether his brother's defeat was just a coincidence. Growing more cautious, especially because of that knife, he decides his brother had been too reckless. Gripping his weapon with both hands, Jun amplifies both his defense and jumping power. He prepares to face our boy, activating all three of his blessings simultaneously. Confident in his rank blessings, privileges that commoners could only dream of, Jun believes his victory is certain, unlike his careless little brother. Meanwhile, Kong calmly counts down the 30 seconds of his blessing. As Jun leaps forward to attack, he realizes that Kong is just standing still. Determined to take him down, Jun closes in, but in an instant, our boy uses his blessing, defeating Jun before he can even land a blow. Jun falls to the floor, defeated in the subspace. Though our boy manages to win the fight, the 30 seconds of his blessing soon expire, and the overwhelming pain returns, causing him to lose consciousness. When Kong finally wakes up, he finds himself in a hospital bed. As he rises, someone nearby alerts the others, announcing that the student has regained consciousness. Our boy sees a face he hasn't encountered in person before but immediately recognizes it. The man who defeated the Demon Lord's 6th Legion commander 50 years ago. It is none other than Isekied, one of the 2 7-star heroes and the strongest human alive. Alongside him is Media, the head sage of the academy. They ask our boy about his health. Confused, he wonders why these figures of such importance are here, but they urge him to introduce himself. Isekied gets straight to the point, questioning Kong about his actions during the exam and the strange sensation that everyone felt earlier. Kong realizes it wasn't just his imagination, it was indeed him. Noticing Isekied's cautious demeanor, Kong understands that being marked by such a powerful individual is never a good thing. When asked to explain himself, Kong says that although it was a pocket dimension, he believed the actions of the others went too far. However, he acknowledges that his response may have been excessive and is prepared to accept any punishment without complaint. Media, with a teasing tone, questions why Isekied is treating a student so seriously. She informs our boy that while he was unconscious, it was Isekied who cleared his blocked blood vessels. With a playful smile, she adds that people tend to get more stubborn with age. Isekied becomes visibly embarrassed and asks why Media is bringing that up. Our boy then realizes that this is why his body feels as light as a feather. Media explains that while he was unconscious, they reviewed the footage of what happened in the subspace, including the moment when he threw himself to protect a beautiful female student. Playfully, she calls him the prince she's always dreamed of and starts flirting with him, while the old man, Isekied, chides her to show some dignity. She reassures Kong that no issues will arise from his actions and mentions that the Mao twins only got into the academy by currying favor with the elders, implying they got what they deserved. Our boy feels relieved, knowing he won't have to deal with them at school anymore. Media then reveals that they both came to inform him that he is the top scorer, a revelation that surprises him. Both Isekied and Media congratulate him, but our boy is left in confusion, realizing that on the very first day, he has already broken all of the principles he set for himself. The scene shifts to an office in the academy, where Media sighs and states that she has been the head of the academy for nearly 20 years, and this is the first time something like this has ever happened. The scene then flashes back to a few moments earlier, where our boy tells Isekied and Media that he doesn't like it. Both Isekied and Media are shocked to hear this. Media, confused, asks Kong if he understands what it means to be star class. She wonders if she heard him correctly, stating that while the elders were furious, this top cadet decision was determined directly by the space itself. Kong pauses for a moment and replies that, despite everything, he still doesn't like it, further shocking both Media and Isekied. Returning to the present, Media asks Isekied if he is upset that Kong took the top spot instead of his granddaughter, as Isekied saw the footage himself. Isekied replies that there is nothing more foolish than questioning the judgment of the subspace imbued with the will of the founding hero, and since the academy chose Kong as the top cadet, Sieg and the others simply followed that decision. Siegfried thought to himself that if Kang's skills were outstanding, he would have understood. If Kang's physical abilities were exceptional, Sieg would have accepted it. And if Kang's experience were remarkable, he would have nodded in agreement. However, the young boy's movements seemed to embody a concept, the very swordsmanship Sieg had pursued his entire life. Yet, the unsettling feeling Sieg experienced when he unlocked the boy's blocked meridians lingered. A boy who had never undergone physical training, with a soft and unconditioned body, seemed to possess something that should not have been contained within him. Sieg couldn't believe that at his age, he still had such a competitive spirit, especially towards a boy the same age as his granddaughter. The scene shifts to Kong looking at the class board. Kong had been admitted to Wolf class, and our boy thinks it was the best compromise Kong could have made. The scene then transitions to the headmaster's office, where media informs Kong that he will be going to the upper class. However, Kong requests that he be placed in Tiger class instead. The frustrated headmaster states that the top cadet cannot be sent to Tiger class. Our boy replies, "In a school that prides itself on equality, why can't Kong?" The headmaster responds, "Even so, Tiger class is off limits." Instead, media offers to keep Kang's powers a secret. In her mind, media thinks that if she sends Kong to Tiger class, the elders will make an even bigger fuss. Kong gets confused seeing media's reaction. Our boy thinks the plan was to quietly complete his studies in a lower class, rather than get caught up in the power struggles of the upper ranks. At least, this much is still within the expected range. As Kong enters the classroom, he is stunned by both the class and the students. The students glance at our boy as he enters, but when they see Kang's green name tag, they start to ignore him and return to chatting. As our boy takes his seat, Kong is surprised that he was completely ignored, meaning the headmaster managed to keep everything under wraps. Kong thinks that this might actually be a good thing. At that moment, a red-haired girl approaches Kong. She thanks him for saving her back then, leaving Kong speechless. The red-haired girl then reminds Kong about the subspace incident. Hearing this, Kong wonders why she is using formal language when they are the same age. Our boy tells the girl that there is no need to thank him, as anyone would have done the same in that situation. The red-haired girl replies, "That's not true." In his mind, our boy thinks it seemed like Kong saved her, but in reality, Kong was just trying to survive. Our boy points out that they haven't introduced themselves yet, so Kong introduces himself first. The red-haired girl then states her name is Chloe. Our boy responds by saying, "It's nice to meet you, Chloe." Kong hadn't expected them to be in the same class. Internally, our boy wonders who Chloe is, as he had played through most of the game but doesn't recognize this character. As far as our boy knows, the main story in the later stages focuses on the battle with the demon tribe, so it's unexpected to see a new character appearing at this time. Finally, our boy realizes that Chloe, like him, might just be a background character. Kong asks Chloe if she can keep what happened during the exam a secret. Chloe replies, "Of course." Just as Chloe was about to say something else to our boy, the teacher enters the classroom and instructs the students to take their seats. Our boy tells Chloe they can talk later after class, and she agrees. The teacher's name is Lee Wonbin, and he introduces himself as the instructor of Wolf class. First, Lee congratulates all the students on their admission to the academy, adding that each of them was chosen to be here, inheriting the will of the founding hero, Valor Joaquin. He encourages the students to be proud of this. Since it's the first day, Lee announces they will begin with some simple physical training. He instructs the students to change into their training clothes and gather at the training ground within 30 minutes. One of the students asks about the training course. Lee explains that it's a simple routine: 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 squats, followed by 10 laps around the training ground. Lee then asks if there are any questions, and if not, the students should change and gather at the training ground. The students shout, "Yes, sir." As they begin leaving the class, our boy, sitting alone, wonders if this training is meant to turn cadets into soldiers. Kong approaches the instructor, and Lee asks, "What is it?" Kong wonders why Instructor Lee knows his name, but our boy realizes that's not important right now. What matters is finding a way to avoid this tedious training. Our boy tells Lee that he's feeling a little unwell. Hearing this, Instructor Lee responds, For the top cadet, I don't think this training will help you feel better. How about training with the star class on your first day? He adds that the headmaster has given our boy permission to attend all classes. Kong feels frustrated hearing this, as media had promised to keep his status as the top cadet a secret. Kong quickly tells instructor Lee that it's not about being sick. He just needs to use the restroom urgently. Our boy, feeling a little sore, reflects on how the instructor has scheduled the training perfectly. Hearing this, instructor Lee says, as expected from the top cadet, and tells Kong he will see him at the training ground. Kong replies, yes. The scene then shifts to the training ground, where our boy feels exhausted from all the running. All the other students are ahead of Kong, leaving him behind, running at his best pace. As Kong continues doing his best, Chloe approaches him and asks if the training is difficult for him, noticing that he looks unwell. Our boy replies, no, it's okay. Chloe then asks what lap Kong is on. He replies that he's on his 5th lap. Curious, our boy asks Chloe about her lap count, as it seemed like she was far behind. Chloe tells Kong that she's on her 9th lap, leaving him stunned. Chloe happily begins to cheer for Kong, encouraging our boy to do his best as she quickly dashes to the front. Kong can't believe what he just witnessed. The scene shifts to Kang's room, where our boy is lying on his bed, having only been drinking water. Frustrated, Kong states that he's hungry. It has now been 1 week since our boy joined the academy, and he has encountered an unexpected problem. The scene moves to the cafeteria, where Kong is ordering his food, but our boy is shocked to see a meal ticket box in front of him, realizing that the food is not free. Kong decides to buy a ticket for his meal, but is further shocked to see the prices. The meal he wants costs 50,000 won. Kong is stunned by how expensive the academy's cafeteria is. Back in his room, our boy finishes the last bottle of water. In frustration, Kong throws the empty bottle at the wall, angry and hungry, unable to believe how high the prices are in the academy's cafeteria. Nearly out of the living expenses his parents gave him, Kong thinks to himself that he's really an idiot for not taking advantage of the situation when he had the chance. For days now, our boy has been surviving on the cheapest water from the campus store. A status window appears in front of Kong, stating that our boy's physical stats have increased to 12, and that the blessing is activated only for swords of specific lengths and widths. Just thinking about it makes the blessing window pop up again for Kong. Our boy stands up and looks at himself in the mirror, stating that it wasn't a waste of time, as Kong has gained a lot of muscle. Our boy wonders if the blessing of the sword god cleared Kang's blood vessels. At this rate, Kong thinks it's almost like an evolution. However, the blessing of the sword god still hasn't fully expanded. If Kong continues improving step by step, our boy might be able to handle short swords soon. Looking at the Sashimi sword, our boy recalls being terrified of even holding a sword during the entrance ceremony. But now, if Kong isn't holding one, his hands itch. Perhaps it's the influence of the blessing. Our boy wonders why he feels so proud. Suddenly, Kong hears a knock on his door. He asks, "Who is it?" And upon opening the door, is surprised to see Chloe. He wonders why she is here. Chloe, shyly, asks if she has perhaps disturbed Kang's rest. Our boy replies that he was just lying down and asks Chloe what's the matter. Chloe shyly tells Kong that she hasn't seen him in the campus cafeteria all week, so she was worried that our boy might not be feeling well. Our boy explains that he usually doesn't eat food made by others, though in his mind, Kong admits that he absolutely loves food made by others. Kong reassures Chloe not to worry. Chloe then suggests that if Kong is okay with it, she was thinking of buying some ingredients from the campus store so they could cook dinner together. Without hesitation, Kong tells Chloe, "Let's go," surprising her. Our boy quickly adds that he's good at cooking and will handle it. Chloe calls after Kong, but he doesn't stop, stating that her dorm is across the street, right? Chloe agrees and says, "Let's go together." The scene then shifts to Chloe's dorm, where she absolutely loves Kang's cooking. Our boy is glad that Chloe enjoys his food. Chloe is impressed, noting that she only boiled fish and never expected to taste cooking like this. Kong then says he'll check the fridge to see if he can make something else as well. As our boy opens the fridge, he finds it filled with fish. Kong comments that Chloe must really like fish. She replies that she does, as she is from a seaside area. Kong responds that's great because our boy specializes in fish dishes. He thinks to himself that this is fortunate, as he really wanted to cook anyway. However, the only problem is the blessing of the sword god. Kong then asks Chloe if she has a longer knife. Chloe asks if he means a long sword. Our boy replies affirmatively, but Chloe knows that his weapon is the Sashimi sword, which makes it feel a bit awkward to use a knife like that. Chloe quickly goes to retrieve a white sword and asks Kong if it's suitable. Shocked and confused, Kong tells Chloe that it's fine and that he will just use the kitchen knife instead. Kong thinks that it can't be helped. As he touches the kitchen knife, the blessing of the sword god activates, and our boy intends to finish the dish in under 30 seconds, which is the limit for the blessing of painlessness. Remarkably, in just 21 seconds, our boy completes the dish. Chloe is impressed by Kang's skills, while our boy thinks to himself that it felt like a masterpiece. Chloe asks our boy how he cooks so well. Kong replies that he used to work part-time at a Japanese restaurant. This is the first time Chloe has heard about a part-time job. Noticing her expression, our boy asks if she doesn't know about part-time work. Chloe apologizes to Kong, but he assures her that there is no need to apologize. In his mind, our boy reflects on the disparity in their backgrounds. Nevertheless, Kong states that he is glad Chloe enjoyed the meal. Chloe then tells our boy that since he prepared the meal, she will handle the dishes. Kong thanks her and says he will leave the dishes to her. He then goes to look at the moon, feeling full and satisfied. However, Kong notices that Chloe has gotten water all over her uniform. Observing her, our boy wonders if Chloe has ever washed dishes before. At that moment, Kong notices a diary on Chloe's desk. Inside, he sees that it's written that someone helped her during the class placement test today, and she feels she must repay him. Kong finds Chloe's handwriting and the stickers she used to be cute, but as the wind blows, the diary pages turn to another entry. Inside the diary, it is written that the person who saved Chloe turns out to be in her class as well, but she can't bring herself to talk to him. Reading this, our boy finds Chloe to be really cute, and now he understands the reason why she couldn't approach him. Curious, Kong goes to read more, but as he turns to the next page, he is shocked to see, "I love him," written on every page. At that moment, Chloe sees Kong with her diary, and a plate drops from her hand, causing our boy to turn around and notice her. With a serious tone, Chloe asks Kong if he saw what was written in the diary. Heroic families gain honor by defeating monsters, receiving the admiration of society, and solidifying their positions. However, within these stagnant institutions, there are always vested interests that exploit the weak under the guise of authority. When even public authorities are powerless to condemn them, one heroic family steps forward to take on the role of shadows. The name of that family is Auditora de Sicilia, a family that operates in the shadows while aiming for the light, combining order maintenance with assassination. Those born into the Auditora family undergo mental conditioning before puberty, suppressing their emotions and enduring harsh training to become assassins. The age at which Chloe first saw blood was 15. We then see an old man telling Chloe not to deny her talents as an assassin, something she had heard even before reaching adulthood. Chloe accepted this. The constant training distorted her mentality, casting a dark shadow deep within her heart. By the time her sense of self was worn away, only traces of emotion remained. Chloe reached the age to enroll in the academy, specifically the Joaquin Academy, where classes are assigned based on individual skill. Although each member of the Auditora family, aiming for the shadows, clearly possessed abilities above the dragon class, they were assigned to the common class due to family tradition and the agreement between the family and the academy. We see the old man telling Chloe to stay out of sight. However, even the 3 years of Chloe's youth were stripped away by the family, taking away all personal freedom as she faced the fate of becoming an assassin. Chloe did not utter a word. She merely accepted her circumstances, thinking that nothing would change either way. She thought so until she met a certain male student during the subspace battle royale. Even though death within the space isn't real, it would be Chloe's first time experiencing death. She didn't cower in fear. Rather, she faced death calmly, confronting her predetermined fate. She had long since ceased her futile struggles. That was how Chloe learned to live, and that was how she had always lived, believing that nothing would change either way, or so it had been. but it felt as though the sun had broken through the dark clouds in the midst of a storm of frost. Chloe felt something, a sword wielded by one's own will, a sword wielded to protect someone. Chloe was the reason why that male student wielded his knife. During her childhood, she remembered the fairy tale she had secretly hidden by her bedside. It was about a princess trapped in a castle and a prince's love, a story that revolved around a prince appearing and saving people. Chloe's face turned red as an unknown, hazy feeling arose within her. She had only one thought, that this was love. We return to the present, where Kong is completely shocked to see Chloe surrounded by her aura. Kong wonders what went wrong. He thinks to himself about when he first glimpsed Chloe's innocence, or was it when he foolishly followed along just for a meal? He then tries to change the topic by asking Chloe if the moon isn't beautiful. Chloe doesn't say anything. Kong thanks Chloe for the delicious dinner and states that he will leave for today, promising to see her tomorrow. Then Chloe asked our boy if he had seen what was written in the diary. Hearing Chloe's tone, our boy was surprised. In his mind, Kong wondered if Chloe had eyes in the back of her head. How had she seen him? On top of that, the informal language that Kong insisted Chloe should change made her seem like a completely different person at that moment. Our boy told Chloe that he hadn't seen anything. Chloe insisted that he was lying, prompting Kong to admit that, yes, he had seen it. Chloe fell silent again and then began to take out her sword, which shocked our boy. He didn't understand what was happening. Looking out the window, he realized they were on the 4th floor, and if he jumped from there, he would get injured. Moreover, there was only one exit. Frustrated, our boy thought that he was trapped here. Then Kong sensed something and noticed that Chloe looked like a completely different person. Her sword was filled with aura as well. Our boy thought that Chloe was really coming at him. He wondered if she was unconscious. He seemed to have a rough idea about such things, noting her motionless pupils and dull red eyes that felt lifeless. Now our boy is sure that Chloe is a Yandere. Furthermore, the fierce, energetic attitude that can change in an instant leads Kong to believe that Chloe might have a split personality. With her Yandere characteristics already overwhelming, the possibility of a split personality adds to his concern. Our boy thinks that opening the diary might have triggered this personality change. He considers this dangerous, as Chloe will probably chase him until he dies. Kong needs to establish a foothold here to ensure his safety. However, he is stunned to realize that Chloe's killing intent is currently stronger than that of the Mao brothers. He cannot help but remark that academy life is truly tough. As our boy calms down, he thinks that he first needs to get out of this situation. He begins to contemplate his options and remembers that he has 9 seconds left on his painlessness skill and that his sashimi knife is in his room. He recalls the knife he used earlier, but it is too far away. Our boy notices that Chloe is getting ready to strike. Kong looks around and sees a box cutter. However, Chloe charges at him with full force. With no choice, our boy grabs the box cutter, activating the blessing of the sword god. As Chloe approaches, our boy notes that her hair seems a little longer, and he expresses his intention to trim it just a bit. Then we see Chloe waking up in her bed. As she awakens, she wonders where Kong has gone, recalling that he was looking out the window while she was doing the dishes. She remembers sneaking a glance at him and then realizes that her katana is missing. Fortunately, she spots her katana beside her bed and feels a sense of relief upon seeing it. Chloe notes that she often loses consciousness when handling a katana. She then recalls the old man praising her, but she has no clear memory of what transpired. The old man reassures her, telling her not to worry about it and that she should embrace her talents as an assassin. Chloe begins to feel embarrassed, her face flushing red as she wonders if she did something strange while unconscious. Spotting the box cutter on the floor, she questions what it is doing there. Upon further reflection, Chloe notices that her hair appears to be shorter and considers that the box cutter may have been used to cut it. Finally, she sees that Kong has tidied up, and when she notices her cut hair in the basket, she is filled with happiness, exclaiming that Kong is truly kind. Chloe thinks that she should write this in her diary before she forgets. The scene shifts outside, where our boy, completely exhausted, reflects on how he managed to get through that situation somehow. He sits on a bench, pondering the deal with Chloe. Generally, The purpose of swordsmanship is to take down an opponent with a single strike. However, the sword Chloe wields relentlessly targets only vital points, almost as if it is specialized for ambushes, posing a significant threat to his life. In a moment of panic, Kong quickly swings his hand. Fortunately, because the knife is short, he only manages to cut her hair. Our boy quickly cleans up, ensuring there shouldn't be any further remarks. Everything seems fine to Kong as he contemplates that achieving stability, safety, and security is not easy. He has heard people say that being ordinary is the hardest path, but this situation is far beyond that. In fact, when our boy was thrown into this game, he had no ambitions. For someone like him, who has reigned at the pinnacle with a single sashimi knife, abandoning romance was not an easy choice. However, everyone has their assigned role. The Blessing of Miracles is the name of the game, and the unique blessing of the protagonist of this sword, whom Kong has yet to encounter, is accompanied by the Blessing of Valor, Baylor Joaquin. Our boy remembers that there are only 2 legendary blessings in the game. The contents of the blessings are intuitive. Please save the world from the Demon King. And the protagonist is chosen by both the Holy Sword and the Demon Sword, Bang. In contrast, our boy can only use sashimi knives. Moreover, since entering the academy, the continuous encounters with these unrealistic figures and situations have made our boy forget his goal. Kong thinks that he has stopped for various reasons. Come to think of it, is there not even a single ordinary person in this world? Our boy has a vague understanding of the important characters in the game, but his comprehension of this world itself is still quite lacking. It has been just over a week since our boy entered the academy, and according to the story, it is about time the main character's blessing has activated, as they are just now completing the enrollment process. This means the story of the game is finally about to truly start. Kong seems to know the general plot, but our boy hasn't seen the ending. Of course, knowing the official story up to the midpoint is definitely an advantage. Whatever happens, Kong decides to follow the official route. If everything gets mixed up, it will only lead to wasting whatever merits remain. If Kang's memory serves him right, the story darkens significantly from the second semester of the 3rd year, sensing the birth of a hero and the demon race, which will unify their forces under demon lords and threaten the academy. The conflict between demons and humanity will eventually escalate into a world war, thus following a typical cliché fantasy plot. Our boy, who sought the charm of a youthful life he never experienced in his teenage years, cannot believe that all the characters died, prompting Kong to delete the game with that thought in mind. What's even more chilling is that this terrible war occurs in this world, and our boy wonders if he will die in the war too. However, our boy realizes that there are still nearly 3 years left. So now our boy needs a realistic goal more than ever. Kong decides to get stronger and survive. He further reflects that most mass-produced game narratives tend to have a happy ending. This world will likely be saved by the protagonist as well. However, our boy needs power to protect himself. He cannot live with the fate of potentially dying at any moment due to the war. Therefore, Kong should train himself to survive without drawing too much attention. If Kong stands out, there is a chance our boy will have to fight the demon army, which is something our boy intends to avoid. Additionally, Kong needs to be cautious with using the Blessing of Painlessness, as our boy picked up the sashimi knife out of necessity, but the burden on Kang's body is too great. Then a status window opens up, and Kong sees that his performance is definitely impressive, but it appears there is a lot of new information. Physical rank, mental rank, weapon rank. The numbers there seem to represent levels of ranks, and this detailed information is something our boy cannot understand as Kong clicks on it. A notification appeared, stating that access is denied due to unmet conditions. Our boy thinks that this is not important right now, adding yet another question to the list of mysteries surrounding his abilities. However, the most pressing concern at the moment is physical training, and our boy needs a new weapon as well. Kong cannot rely solely on the Blessing of Painlessness for 30 seconds indefinitely. He also needs to train with swords that do not meet the conditions for the Sword God's Blessing. Fortunately, next month, there will be a practical combat training session replacing the midterm exams, and the reward for this training is the Murasame, a B-class weapon. If our boy can handle the Murasame skillfully, it will be sufficient for graduation. Its specifications do not meet the activation conditions for the Sword God's Blessing, so it won't impose a burden as a primary weapon. Kong realizes that there is more to do than he initially thought. At that moment, Abel approaches from behind and tells Kong that it is her spot. Our boy is shocked to see her. Frustrated, Abel insists that Kong move a bit. As our boy shifts aside, he can't help but think that Abel looks unreal, no matter how he sees her. Our boy ends up staring at Abel without realizing it. Abel tells Kong that there is no need for him to leave. He just needs to move a little bit. As Abel sits down, our boy thinks that it's her spot, but aren't the benches public property? Kong considers that this might be due to the class system. He thinks that if he gets involved with the heroine, the main story will definitely become complicated, and Kong decides to avoid it, even if it becomes uncomfortable. On the other hand, Kong finds Abel to be truly beautiful. Abel informs Kong that this is where the stars are most visible, which startles our boy. Kong looks at Abel, smiling, and wonders if this is really Abel, the granddaughter of the sword saint he knows. The protagonist was also a difficult character to approach at the beginning. Then Abel asks our boy if his weapon is also a sword. Kong asks Abel how she knows that. Abel replies that her grandfather told her, and she also heard that swordmasters have a different look in their eyes. Kong seems flustered and confused. Then Abel asks our boy if he wants to try holding her sword. Kong remarks that the sword doesn't feel heavy at all. However, he is surprised to see Abel sulking. Kong thinks that Abel is difficult to get used to and wonders if this is really the Abel he knows. Then Abel asks our boy if he doesn't recognize her. Upon hearing this, our boy wonders why Abel isn't questioning Han, as if she suspects him. Kong thinks, of course, Abel isn't questioning him, since there isn't a single person in this school who doesn't know who Abel is. He conveys this to Abel, who then responds by saying she doesn't know him. In his mind, our boy questions what Abel's point is. Abel continues, remarking that it's rather cliché for Kong to know her name while she doesn't know his. Our boy asks if he really needs to introduce himself to someone he just met. Abel replies that one can never be too sure. He could be a spy for the Demon King, infiltrating the academy as a student, for all she knows. Abel also suggests there's no good reason for Kong to be out alone this late at night. Both of them exchange serious looks, and Kong thinks there's no rhyme or reason to the situation. Then, our boy asks Abel why she's out here. Abel responds, "Isn't it obvious? I'm here to exercise and train." Kong tells her that he's been exercising too. Abel asks him what kind of exercise, and with a straight face, our boy replies, "Breathing." Abel finds Kang's answer absurd, but as our boy looks at her hands, he notices that Abel has indeed been training. Seeing Kong, Abel quickly hides her hand. Our boy then tells her that she is very diligent. Abel responds, "Of course I am. People don't understand what it means to be part of the nibbling family. One must be perfect at all times. If even a sliver of weakness is shown, others will seize upon it." Abel states that his camp knows that Abel isn't the top student this year. To be honest, this is the first time Abel has ever lost to someone. Our boy remains silent. Abel then asks Kong if he knew, smiling as she states that on one hand, she felt relieved, but she was still curious about the person who defeated her. She wanted to find out who they were so she could crush them next time. Our boy is stunned to hear this. Kong asks if she really has to go that far. Abel replies, "It's a matter of pride." She goes on to explain that she kept asking her grandfather for details, but he told her that the top student wasn't even in her class. To make matters worse, the top student had the nerve to skip the oath ceremony. Abel adds, "How could I live with being second place after that?" After calming down, Abel reflects, "I'm sharing all of this with someone I don't even know." Kong then asks Abel why she is telling him all this. Abel replies, "Because you're weak." She further explains that the motto of her family is, "Be firm with the strong and merciful to the weak." Abel adds that all her classmates are exceptional at what they do, so she doesn't have any friends. Hearing this, Kong thinks this must be why the main character is so distant. Abel then tells our boy that she's going to turn in for the night. Hearing this, Kong says his goodbye. Abel sits quietly for a moment before asking, "Are you really not going to tell me your name?" Our boy responds that he doesn't want to. The scene shifts to Kang's classroom, where our boy sits alone, reflecting on how his life at the academy is much calmer than he had anticipated. Chloe quickly befriended others and blended into the class, while our boy was busy avoiding eye contact and trying not to run into her. In the instances where Kong did meet Chloe's gaze, her new friends would stare at him with icy looks. But our boy couldn't care less about their dismissive stares, as he was a special admission student. He wasn't the only unique one in the Tiger class, though there weren't many like him. Despite being in the same class, they were reluctant to interact with each other. Kong guessed it stemmed from a sense of entitlement. Thinking about it, our boy noted that it was actually a good thing not to be in the upper class, especially since this was the season when the Star and Dragon classes formed political factions. Even back when Kong played this game, they always felt like clowns. Just the thought of being in that class now made our boy dizzy. Kong is content, though, as at least he's eating well. He wonders what he should eat today. We see that media gave Kong a card for daily use, a perk for being the top student. Media also apologized to Kong for the delay in receiving the card, explaining that it's actually a faculty member's card. Bowing 3 times a day to the academy director wouldn't be enough to express how thankful our boy is. Now, Kong reflects that he has been fulfilling his duties as a student faithfully, without significantly impacting the main scenario. Our boy resolves to spend the next 3 years like this. If Kong can manage that, he believes he can achieve the future he's imagined. The scene then shifts to the next classroom, where the teacher begins explaining to the students about events that took place 700 years ago. After the first Human-Demon War, the hero Joaquin Baylor, recognizing the need to cultivate the next generation of heroes, established this academy with his 7 disciples. The teacher reminds the students that this information will be on their upcoming exam and urges them to familiarize themselves with it. Meanwhile, Kong, bored in class, reflects that our boy already knows most of it. As the founding hero, Joaquin Baylor fought for 20 years against the commander of the First Corps and the Demon King's right-hand man, Lekin, and emerged victorious. However, Joaquin injured his arm and could no longer participate in battle. The war had no clear victor, but fortunately, the humans and demons reached a truce during the conflict. Joaquin then established the academy to nurture future generations. The teacher continues, explaining that the first Human-Demon War led to the signing of the non-aggression treaty between the two parties, ushering in an era of peace that has lasted for the past 700 years. Hearing this, the students begin to chat about whether there will be a war in their generation. Meanwhile, Kong thinks to himself that our boy is the only one aware that the beginning of the first crack suggests that peace is not far off. It's unnatural for everyone to be so accustomed to this serenity. As much as our boy would like to tell media what's happening, he is uncertain of the consequences that such a revelation might bring. Although media does not hide her desire to leave her position as dean as soon as possible, she was the first person in the story to sense the abnormality. Media was also the first of the 7 heroes to step up to protect the students. While our boy didn't play much of the game, Kong did look it up and discovered that Media was the first hero to be taken down by the Demon King. He thinks that if only he didn't know that. Then the teacher informs the students that's all for today and reminds them to study hard for the exam in 2 weeks. As class ends, the students rush outside together. Seeing them, our boy wonders what is happening. He then realizes it must be him, as today is the 5th of May. Kong goes outside as well, thinking that if his memory serves him correctly, today marks the enrollment of the world's main character, named Leon van Reinhardt, and the 700 years of peace will soon experience its first crack. Our boy finds Leon annoying, particularly because the women who will fall for him include Rachel Demura, niece of the Spear Saint, Saki Ryojo, daughter of the Bow Saint, and Abel von Nibelung, granddaughter of the Sword Emperor. Our boy thinks that even the members of the protagonist party are impressive. The protagonist of Blessing of Miracles, Leon van Reinhardt, will be one of the first drafted in 3 years. In reality, drafted is a nice way of putting it, as it is no different from forced conscription, and Kong refuses to go through that a second time. By the way, even Valor Joaquin was only able to seal the first Legion commander, which makes Kong wonder just how powerful the Demon King truly is. Our boy knows that this isn't some insane story where the protagonist loses. Just then, Leon looks at Kong and smiles, which surprises him. Kong reflects that Leon has the Blessing of Miracles, suggesting that the protagonist of the story will be able to handle things on his own. Our boy notices that Leon has a pretty trustworthy face, and finds himself convinced without realizing it. The scene then shifts to the training hall, where Kong is practicing with a wooden sword. After a few swings, our boy realizes that deviating from the standard means the blessing doesn't manifest. He needs to possess a certain level of skill and swordsmanship. Just then, Chloe approaches our boy and asks if she made some kind of mistake. Surprised, Kong wonders when she arrived. He tells Chloe that nothing happened, to which she asks, "Really?" Our boy reassures her, as he intends to keep things peaceful and doesn't want to make unnecessary enemies. Chloe expresses her relief, saying that's a good thing. In his mind, our boy contemplates Chloe's true identity. She had been able to handle a sword even while unconscious, a sword filled with sorrow. The blade seemed to plead for help for some reason, yet it was still imbued with killing intent, making Chloe more dangerous than the Mao brothers. Chloe then asks Kong if it's okay with him for her to invite him to dinner that night, as she really wants to repay him. Of course, Chloe isn't as skilled in cooking as Kong. As he thinks about dinner, our boy recalls what happened last time. However, seeing the look on Chloe's face, he hesitates. Kong thinks it feels awkward to refuse, but if he accepts, he might find himself in trouble. Then he comes up with an idea and asks Chloe if it's a bit awkward to say, but instead of dinner, could he ask her for a favor? He explains that he couldn't think of anyone else but Chloe to rely on. Hearing this, Chloe becomes happy and asks what the favor is. Our boy states that he would like Chloe to teach him swordsmanship. Then the scene shifts to a few moments later, where our boy, while holding the wooden sword, he thinks that he needs a swordsmanship teacher anyway, and Chloe is frighteningly strong. Kong wonders if this is a good excuse, considering that since that day, the one thing he makes sure to watch before going to bed is how to survive a yandere, which has proven helpful. Chloe, radiating her bright energy, approaches our boy and asks when he arrived, mentioning that she was waiting for him over there. Kong replies that he just got here, and then asks Chloe what about her. She responds that she also just arrived. Our boy inquires about the time, and Chloe tells him it was around 6:30. He reminds her that they agreed to meet at 8, and Chloe can't help but smile. Kong keeps staring at Chloe and looking at her outfit. Seeing this, Chloe asks our boy if something is wrong. He replies that it's nothing. In his mind, Kong reflects that he hadn't noticed when Chloe was in her uniform, but now he can see her defined abs and muscles. He understands why Chloe is so strong and finds her cute as well. Kong hands Chloe the wooden sword, and as she takes it, she remarks that she thought they would be using real swords. Surprised by this, our boy wonders if he heard her correctly. Who trains with real swords? This is not a battle. He tells Chloe that it's training, so they should use wooden swords to avoid injuries. Chloe states that Kong is really kind. As Chloe swings the wooden sword, Kong is stunned to see her aura power manifesting even through the wooden weapon. He wonders just how strong Chloe's aura is. As Kong grabs his wooden sword, he decides to be careful. Suddenly, a status window opens up, and our boy confirms whether he can use the wooden sword without activating the blessing. He sees that the sword's specifications are fine and that his physical growth is steady, but he wonders if the blessing is usually like this. While it's common for a blessing to upgrade with skill level, Kong wonders if it usually comes with additional effects, as he doesn't recall it being like this. He considers how much growth is needed to see this. Observing our boy standing there, Chloe asks if something is wrong. Kong apologizes to her, stating that it's nothing. In his mind, he thinks that this status window seems to be visible only to him, which means he must look like a spaced-out idiot to Chloe. Seeing Chloe's excitement, our boy reminds her that today is his first time doing swordsmanship, so she should go easy on him. Chloe replies, "Of course." Our boy gets ready and states that they should begin. As they face each other, he reflects on his practical approach in his past life. As the saying goes, seeing is believing. To become a master in any field, it's not enough to merely work hard. Kang's quick adaptation to the academy is also a product of the learning he has absorbed since he was young. Chloe gets ready to strike as she begins to gather her aura. Kong thinks to himself that his hands are sweaty and his posture is awkward. Because the essence of swordsmanship is to precisely strike the opponent, Chloe charges straight at our boy with full speed. Surprised by her speed, our boy barely manages to avoid her strike. Stunned, he thinks that he told Chloe to take it easy, but she seems to be in a league of her own. She strikes at him again, and Kong blocks it with his sword, finding her strike incredibly heavy. After barely managing to block her attack once more, our boy decides to counterattack. To his surprise, Chloe jumps into the air and prepares to strike at him again. Trying to focus, Kong notices that Chloe is moving even faster than before. As she strikes, Kong braces himself and takes the hit head-on with his sword, but Chloe's attacks don't stop there. She continues to strike at him from different angles again and again. Our boy finds himself being pushed back, realizing that her strikes are extraordinarily heavy. If he takes many more hits like this, he might be seriously injured. As Kong reaches his limits, he struggles to find an opportunity to counterattack. But then, suddenly, Kang's wooden sword broke in half. Seeing this, Chloe apologizes to him, explaining that she meant to go easy but ended up breaking the wooden sword. However, at that moment, it becomes clear that our boy's broken wooden sword has now met the conditions for the blessing of the sword god, and the blessing is activated. Our boy loses control and finds himself surrounded by a blue aura. Surprised, Chloe backs off, unable to understand what is happening. She asks Kong if he is all right, but he doesn't listen and charges at her with full force. Stunned, Chloe barely manages to block the strike, but our boy is now more powerful than before and pushes her back, causing her to crash into the wall. Stunned, Chloe thinks that Kong seems like a completely different person from just moments ago. Our boy, on the other hand, wastes no time and strikes at Chloe again, but she dodges the attack. He has completely lost control and is now under the influence of the blessing of the sword god. Seemingly injured, Chloe reflects that Kang's previous attack caught her off guard, making it hard for her to move now. She wonders what on earth has happened to him. Although Chloe doesn't understand what is going on, she realizes she needs to stop the match for now. She tells our boy to stop, but he charges at her with incredible speed. Seeing Kong approach, Chloe thinks that she can't avoid this strike. She tells our boy to get a hold of himself, but just as he is about to strike at Chloe, she shouts his name. The scene shifts to Kong, who seems to be somewhere in the kitchen, where he hears Chloe's voice calling for him. We then return to the training ground, where Kong has thrown his sword into the wall, missing Chloe. Chloe tells our boy that it's her, and he smiles at her, apologizing and stating that they should stop for today. Seeing that Kong is back to normal, Chloe asks if he is all right. Our boy thanks Chloe for helping him with his practice and mentions that he will head in first. As our boy leaves the training ground, the scene shifts to later that night, where Chloe is walking to her dorm. She reflects that ever since the class assignment test, Kang's skills are not just raw strength but carry an eerie feeling. It's not only his skill but also his raw instinct. Even though the blessing manifested unconsciously, Chloe realizes she is still no match for Kong, especially with a half-training sword. She knew he was strong but never expected him to be this powerful. At that moment, someone with a mask covering his face tells Chloe that she seems to be enjoying herself. Chloe's expression turns serious upon seeing the masked man. The masked man's name is Nox Auditor, a second-year student. Chloe addresses Nox as brother and asks him what he is doing here. Nox responds by questioning if this is all Chloe is doing after entering the academy, making friends with commoners. Chloe insists that Nox should not refer to Kong in that manner. Hearing this, Nox acknowledges that the guy's name is Kong and warns Chloe that if she continues to associate with him, the Auditor family will eliminate him. Chloe walks past Nox, telling him that even if the entire Auditor family comes, they will not be able to handle Kong. Nox, taken aback, wonders who this Kong is. The scene then shifts to our boy, who reflects that he needs to clarify something. The power he has been granted is not a divine blessing or favor. Rather, it seems more like a curse. To avoid relying on the blessing of the sword god, our boy sets out to find new equipment, but that power seems to mock his efforts, following him and taking control of his body. While Kong feels no pain, he also experiences a debilitating sensation that seems to go on endlessly. That curse manipulates our boy like a marionette bound by threads. Kong surrendered completely to the voice that whispered sweet words to him. Cut more, destroy more. Chloe's scream, filled with desperation, called out the name that our boy had come to recognize as his own, Kong Jiama. In that cry, the fragments of the worlds were brought together. Our boy threw away the training sword that had clung to him like his own skin, realizing that if he did not detach it now, he would lose himself forever. Until recently, Chloe was merely a Yandra who wanted to kill Kong, but now she had become the girl who revived his fading consciousness. Although Chloe was the one who originally broke the sword and caused this issue, our boy felt a mix of irritation and gratitude. Therefore, he decided to let it go without dwelling on it further. Even so, Kong left in a hurry to avoid the possibility of the sword god's blessing manifesting again. But could he truly evade this problem for the rest of his life? The sword god's blessing was a talent that felt close to a curse, manifested by trading one's lifespan. It was a burden that Kong had to bear. As an outsider cast into this world, our boy didn't wish for much. He simply wanted to live a normal life. He believed he could handle a few incidents as they arose, but only now did he realize there was something within his body, something trying to consume his reason. This was not a blessing. Rather, it was a curse solely intended to devour Kong. The art of the reverse heavens. The scene shifts to 3 days later in the classroom, where all the students have gathered. We see Chloe chatting with her friend, but ever since the day she trained with Kong, our boy hasn't been seen. It has now been 3 days. Chloe realizes that she doesn't even have Kang's contact information and wonders why she didn't ask for it earlier. She had gone to his dorm room and even knocked on the door, but all she could hear were groans of pain. Chloe wanted to break in but was afraid Kong would resent her for it, so she turned away. Chloe reflects on how she enjoys watching Kong when he's deep in thought, resting his chin on his hand during class. She's lost count of how many times she's glanced at him every morning. Afraid that Kong might think she's weird, Chloe is always careful when she talks to him. Initially, she thought she had fallen for Kong because he saved her life, but maybe that was just an excuse. She truly misses him. The scene then shifts to the next day in the classroom, where Teacher Lee instructs everyone to keep quiet. Since the weather forecast predicted rain today, the training has been replaced with self-study. However, in his mind, Instructor Lee thinks once again that Kong Jiama hasn't shown up. Lee assumes Kong must have his reasons, and he trusts our boy, believing that trusting and waiting is the true duty of an educator. Lee then instructs the students to begin their self-study. At that moment, a student enters the class late, and Lee goes to see who it is. He is shocked to see that it's our boy, Kong. As Kong walks down the stairs to his seat, Chloe, too, is surprised to see him. With a serious expression, Kong apologizes to Instructor Lee for his tardiness. Still surprised, Lee responds that it's fine and tells Kong to take his seat. Seeing Kong, the students in the class begin to talk and murmur, wondering if he has always looked like that. Some remark that Kong has become more handsome than before. The scene then shifts to after class, where the students are heading to the cafeteria. Chloe approaches Kong and asks him if something happened. Kong replies that nothing is wrong. Chloe then tells our boy that he has been absent for a few days, so she thought something might be wrong, and asks if it's because of the battle training. Kong remains silent for a moment, then, with a smile, informs Chloe that he had a severe fever over the past few days and thanks her for worrying about him. Chloe says she's glad to hear that, but she still doesn't seem entirely convinced. Seeing her doubt, Kong thinks it's only natural for her to be suspicious. Over the past few days, our boy has been tormented to the point where his mental state nearly collapsed, as if going through severe withdrawal. He couldn't eat and locked himself in his room, burying himself in bed, praying for the pain to stop. It was the price of using a damaged weapon. The pain was worse than anything our boy had ever experienced. But that wasn't the only strange thing. The face Kong saw in the mirror had the same bone structure, but his expression had become colder, and even parts of his hair had turned white. Our boy realizes that the changes he's experiencing are the penalty of the divine power, the blessing of the sword god. In the present, Kong thinks that Chloe seems to feel guilty, which is understandable since she was the last person he fought and met. Kong knows he needs to explain everything to her. Kong then suggests to Chloe that they have dinner together, as he promised, tonight. Chloe is both surprised and happy to hear this. However, Kong adds that this time, our boy wants to eat Chloe's cooking. Chloe happily agrees, saying, "Of course," and promises to do her best, excitedly mentioning that she can't wait. Seeing her enthusiasm, Kong thinks Chloe is really looking forward to the dinner. Chloe then tells Kong she will cook whatever he wants and asks what he'd like to eat. Kong replies that he hasn't had fish in a while and recalls that the last time he had fish was at Chloe's dorm. However, he couldn't eat it because it was too expensive. At that moment, our boy senses something behind him. He looks around to see what he was sensing, and it turns out to be Chloe's brother, Nox. Chloe is shocked to see Nox there. Noticing her reaction, Kong asks if she knows him, but Chloe remains silent. Our boy then walks straight toward Nox. As they come face to face, Kong asks Nox if he has something to say and tells him to speak up instead of just staring. Kong also warns him not to keep glaring at him, but Nox continues to stare, his eyes filled with a strange aura. Chloe intervenes, telling Kong that he doesn't need to pay attention to Nox, though our boy is puzzled by the look in Chloe's brother's eyes. She then calls Nox brother, and Chloe states that she specifically told Nox not to come and asks him why he has shown up. Hearing this, Kong realizes that Nox is Chloe's brother. He notices that, though Chloe's voice is sharp, it's trembling, which means she must be scared. Nox responds by telling Chloe that Kong doesn't seem strong and questions whether she's sure she wants to be with someone like him, even if it means breaking the Auditora family's rules. Frustrated, Chloe replies that whether it's about the Auditora or anything else, it's no longer her concern. Nox replies that once someone is born into the Auditora family, they are bound to it forever. Meanwhile, Kong thinks that younger sister is speaking as she is a rebel. On the other hand, older brother is speaking as he is in a historical drama. Nox then tells Chloe to leave this poor man and return to the Auditora. Frustrated, Chloe shouts, telling Nox not to dare call Kong that. Shocked, Kong thinks Chloe should lower her killing intent, thankful that all the students have already gone to eat. Kong begins to understand the situation, as he remembers everything now. The Auditora is an organization of shadows, specializing in infiltration and assassination. They appear later in the game, and though people say that, on the battlefield, the Auditora members are not as powerful as other hero families, when it comes to stealth attacks, they are unmatched. From a young age, their children undergo intense training, raised to become instruments of killing. It's said that every member of the Auditora family is incredibly strong. Now, Kong realizes that Chloe comes from the Auditora family. Looking at Nox, our boy recognizes the face of someone accustomed to killing. Now, Kong thinks it all makes sense. The Auditora family likely eliminates anyone who threatens their order to maintain control. Our boy also considers that, even here, he wouldn't hesitate to kill if necessary, and he could probably justify it. Kong then looks at Chloe, who is trembling. He thinks that all Chloe wants is to live a normal life, but like his own connection to the blessing of the sword god, Chloe was born into a family of killers, a place that won't allow her to live a peaceful life. A life where she constantly has to kill, like a machine. It must be unbearable. Kong reflects that he is not a hero. Our boy can't be and doesn't want to be. But even though Kong can't save the world, he can at least help change one girl's life. Kong tells Chloe not to worry, assuring her that he will talk to Nox. He admits to himself that, despite everything, he hopes the blessing of good intentions stays with him, as it's more than just a curse. This power won't allow Kong to lose. In the end, Kong realizes he has come full circle. Despite his efforts to escape the sword god's blessing, he can't run from it. Kong recalls a line from a comic that said, "There is no comfort in the place someone runs to," which Kong finds to be profoundly true. He realizes that if he can't escape, he might as well push forward. After all, our boy's name is Kongjiama, geometry meaning sword, and Ma meaning demon. Kong moves forward and tells Nox to follow him, as he intends to take him down. The scene then shifts to the faculty office, where Instructor Lee is sitting, deep in thought. He senses something strange about Kong, noticing that his face seemed devoid of all emotion. Suddenly, Instructor Lee receives a call informing him that a student has requested access to the subspace. Shocked, Lee asks for the student's identity and their opponent. He falls silent when he hears that the student requesting to enter the subspace is Kongjiama, and his opponent is Nox Auditora. The scene shifts to a room where our boy sits alone. Kong reflects that there are still 15 minutes before the subspace duel begins. He thought the process would be more complicated, but everything went smoothly. Kong then remembers the media's warning to be cautious if he's serious about this duel. Even though subspace doesn't affect reality and no physical damage carries over, the mental toll remains. Still, Kong thinks that as long as our boy wins, that's all that matters. Kong can hear the noise from the waiting room and understands that watching a fight is exciting, but he didn't expect the atmosphere to be this lively. He also reflects on how, in the past, he used to try to remain unassuming, but now it feels like all of that effort was pointless. Next to him, Chloe sits worried and crying. Seeing her, Kong thinks that she must be blaming herself. He gently tells Chloe not to worry, reassuring her that it's not her fault. Chloe even lent Kong her weapon, so she shouldn't be concerned. Everything will be fine. Despite his words, Chloe still looks worried. Chloe tells Kong that her brother is strong, to which our boy replies that she is strong as well. Chloe then explains that her brother, Nox, is a genius with unparalleled talent in the history of the Auditora family. When it comes to throwing weapons, Nox is the best, and by the age of 14, he was already known as the greatest master of night techniques. Hearing this, Kong wonders who came up with such a title, Greatest Master of Night Techniques. Our boy realizes that it has always been this way. No matter how hard he tries to avoid it, in the end, he has no choice but to face this decision. Kong then recalls his master from his previous life, who told him he was destined to wield a blade for the rest of his days. Kong reflects that even his master wouldn't have expected that in Kang's second life, he would still be using a sashimi knife like this. Just then, an announcement calls for the selected student to enter the training arena. Kong simply states that he's heading out. Before leaving, Kong tells Chloe that there are many geniuses in this world, but in the end, our boy will be the one to win this duel. As Kong steps into the arena, the crowd starts cheering loudly, expressing their belief in the special student and encouraging Kong to give everything he has in the duel. The students have been waiting for a fight like this for a long time. Kong, on the other hand, feels like a Roman gladiator, as he didn't expect such a large crowd. He notices that several star-class students are present, including Abel, Leon, and others. Kong wonders if they don't have anything better to do, as their presence only adds unnecessary pressure. Meanwhile, Nox appears frustrated. Emitting his aura, he states that Kong doesn't understand what he's getting into. To Nox, it seems our boy can't tell the difference between bravery and arrogance. Nox then asks Kong how he dares to challenge him with such a pitiful weapon. In contrast, Kong senses that Nox's killing intent is off the charts and wonders if Nox has truly lost his mind. Kong tells Nox that a true monster doesn't care about weapons, which only angers Nox further. Emitting the full scale of his aura, Nox declares that he will teach our boy a lesson. Kong notices that Nox is wielding 2 S-rank weapons, and on top of that, he is using one of his top-tier blessings to conceal this world, the Blessing of the Crow. Now, our boy can feel Nox's true killing intent, and Kong acknowledges that he is serious as well. Kong also possesses 2 weapons, his sashimi knife and the one Chloe gave him. As they face each other, the duel begins, and they enter the subspace. Both of them charge at each other with full force. Kong manifests the Painlessness Blessing and the Sword God's Blessing as well. Outside the subspace, the students watching the match are surprised, as they cannot see Nox and our boy attacking at all, assuming this was merely a battle between 2 weak students. However, Kong and Nox are striking at each other with incredible speed, moving so quickly that only their auras can be seen. We return to the audience, where Rachel is sitting with Abel, stating that this fight is becoming interesting. Abel, surprised to see that the weak-looking kid she met at the park can fight like this, watches intently. Back to the duel, both Nox and Kong appear to be evenly matched. However, as Nox sees an opening, he uses his special technique to strike at our boy. To Nox's surprise, Kong is able to dodge the attack. Undeterred, Nox employs another technique called Three-Legged Crow, closing the distance between himself and Kong in an instant. Our boy is taken aback by this display. Kong finds himself surrounded by Nox's aura technique, and with a smirk, Nox declares that this duel is over. Yet, Kong takes a stance and in an instant, dodges Nox's technique. Nox is astonished to see that Kong has evaded this move as well. The scene shifts to the audience, where one student remarks that although he can see glimpses of the fight, the second-year student is clearly superior, as the first-year student is preoccupied with dodging. Another student replies that while the second-year student seems impressive, they cannot underestimate a year of battle experience. On the other hand, Abel thinks to herself that anyone watching this duel carefully can tell the truth. The second year is attacking fiercely, but the first year is easily dodging every strike, seemingly refusing to fight back. We return to the duel, where Nox finally realizes that what Chloe said is true. Kong is not an ordinary student. Even after using the blessing of the crow to take down Kong, Nox finds that our boy continues to dodge the attacks effortlessly. Focused on speed, Nox acknowledges that he must be even more cautious, especially since he can execute a wide-range attack in a single strike. The more Nox observes Kong, the more frustrated he becomes, particularly because our boy is accomplishing all of this with a kitchen knife. At that moment, Kong drops his sashimi knife, surprising Nox, who wonders what Kong is planning. Our boy then takes a stance, pointing the kitchen sword that Chloe gave him toward Nox. Seeing this, Nox becomes filled with anger, thinking that Kong is trying to mock him with that ridiculous stance. A commoner cannot dare to mock Nox like this. He begins to gather his aura, and wings start to appear as the surroundings become enveloped in Nox's aura. As Nox prepares to strike at our boy, Kong charges forward in an instant and strikes Nox directly, catching him off guard and preventing any movement. Kong remembers the need to follow the rules without attracting attention. This feeling is like a curse that continually chases him and controls his body. Now, he realizes he cannot escape the power of the blessing of the sword god. Nonetheless, Kong is determined to cut it down. We see that Kong has severely injured Nox's right arm, rendering him unable to move. The audience, including Leon, is stunned by this turn of events. Kong states that whether the power he possesses is a blessing or a curse, he will use it, and with that, he bids farewell to his peaceful future. The whole arena is filled with smoke as the subspace barrier has been turned off, and the students in the audience are shocked by what they have just witnessed. In the arena, Nox is on his knees, while our boy stands confidently, unsheathing his sword. Abel and Rachel can't believe what they have just seen. The announcer then declares the duel has come to an end, and the students begin murmuring among themselves about the match. Kong wonders if he should have expected such a reaction, but realizes there's no turning back now. After all, our boy achieved this with just a kitchen knife, and it was Kang's first time facing an opponent as well. He starts to feel uneasy, though he finds some consolation in the fact that both the Mao brothers and Nox were inside the subspace during the fight. Kong is impressed by the subspace's specifications. On the other hand, Nox can't believe he lost the duel. Now, he understands that Kong is just as strong as Chloe had described. From Nox's perspective, Kong possesses incredible battle sense, honed through experience. However, Kong reflects that anyone could have sensed Nox through his intense killing intent, which ultimately worked to Kang's advantage. The duel's results are displayed on the screen, and the announcer declares the winner. The freshman from Tiger Class, Kong. The duel ended in just 25 seconds. The students are stunned to see that a first-year special admission student defeated a senior so easily. Kong, realizing the impact of his victory, thinks to himself that there's no turning back now from the peaceful life he once imagined. This is the path our boy has chosen, and Kong resolves to endure it with sheer will and determination. The scene shifts to the following day, where students are still buzzing about the duel. They've learned that the senior whom the special admission student faced was from the auditor family. Yet even someone that powerful was taken down by freshman Kong. Meanwhile, Abel sits alone, lost in thought, contemplating our boy. She reflects that Kong Jiama is always on her mind, as he's the only person everyone in the academy seems to be talking about. Yesterday's duel was shocking for Abel, to say the least. She couldn't believe what she had witnessed. Kong displayed remarkable swordsmanship, using only 2 kitchen knives. Abel had always taken pride in her knowledge of swords, being the daughter of a swordmaster, but now she finds herself feeling hopelessly naive. She never imagined someone could be that skilled with such ordinary blades. Abel's thoughts shift, and she realizes that she is still curious about the person who had defeated her. She wants to know who they are, driven by the desire to defeat them next time. Then, She remembers her grandfather mentioning that the top student this year wasn't from her classroom. Connecting the dots, Abel concludes that it might have been Kong. Anger rises within her as she considers the possibility, and what's even more frustrating is that our boy is actually stronger than her. Abel begins to wonder what Kong was thinking when she had called our boy weak and proudly told him about her family motto. Frustrated, she stands up abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. Hearing the noise, Rachel wakes up and asks Abel what's going on. Abel quickly calms down and apologizes, assuring her that it's nothing. Rachel, unconvinced, asks if Abel is sure. Abel explains that she hasn't been able to train recently, so she's feeling a bit sluggish. As a true friend, Rachel probes further, asking what's really going on and pointing out that something seems off about Abel's expression. Abel pretends not to understand, but Rachel presses her, teasing that maybe Abel is just hungry. Abel denies this, so Rachel jokes, asking if she left her equipment at home. Abel replies no. Then, Rachel playfully asks if Abel is having boy trouble, catching Abel off guard. Abel blushes, shocked by the question. Seeing her reaction, Rachel laughs, commenting that she didn't think Lady Abel would be interested in romance. Abel, still blushing, insists that's not the case. Rachel then playfully asks about the lucky boy Abel seems to be thinking about, suggesting it might be Leon. With a straight face, Abel replies no. Rachel, noticing Abel's unusual response, finds it odd that she's still apprehensive about Leon. Then Rachel asks if it could be that special student from yesterday. Abel's expression quickly changes, and seeing this, Rachel feels proud of her intuition. She grabs Abel's hand and says, "Let's go." Abel asks where they are headed, and Rachel replies, "To the Tiger class, of course." The scene shifts to the Tiger class, where Rachel confidently enters. All the Tiger class students are shocked to see them. As they walk forward, Abel tells Rachel they should go back, but Rachel reassures her not to worry. At that moment, Rachel climbs onto a desk to look for our boy. A Tiger class student approaches and warns Rachel that, regardless of her status, she shouldn't be standing on the desk. That's going too far. But Rachel ignores him and continues scanning the room until she finally spots our boy sitting with Chloe. Seeing Chloe, Rachel briefly wonders if she's our boy's girlfriend, but quickly dismisses the thought, thinking that this only makes things more fun. Chloe, who had been smiling, suddenly has her expression change when Rachel approaches Kong and blows in his ear. Both Chloe and Abel are stunned by Rachel's boldness. Our boy wakes up groggily and doesn't immediately understand what's going on. As he looks at Rachel, she apologizes for waking him up and asks, "Your name is Kong, right?" Rachel admits she didn't know who our boy was before what happened yesterday in the subspace. In his mind, our boy is surprised to see Rachel and wonders what she's doing here. As Rachel reaches out to touch Kong, Chloe, filled with anger and slipping into her Yandra mode, demands to know Rachel's identity and what she's trying to do. Rachel is caught off guard by Chloe's sudden change in demeanor. Meanwhile, Kong is shocked, thinking that this must be the danger his instincts had been warning him about. Chloe's personality has completely flipped, and Kong grows even more concerned when he notices that Chloe now has a box cutter in her hand. Frustrated, Kong thinks about the possibility of a fight breaking out in the classroom, realizing this is a situation he's never encountered in the game before. He can't figure out why things are spiraling out of control so suddenly. At that moment, Abel steps in, trying to stop Rachel and asking her what she's trying to do, reminding her that this isn't their classroom. With a smile, Rachel says, "What's the matter, Abel? Can't I say hello?" She then walks over to Chloe, patting her on the head and saying, "You shouldn't interrupt when the adults are talking, and it's not safe to play with sharp objects either." Chloe, filled with anger, looks like she's getting ready to strike. As Rachel turns to speak with our boy, Chloe sees an opening and lunges at Rachel with the box cutter. Kong and Abel are stunned, but Rachel effortlessly blocks Chloe's attack by grabbing her hand. "You're slow," Rachel says calmly. "I thought you were just a kid, but it seems you've got quite a short fuse." Abel steps in, urging Rachel to stop making a scene, but Rachel doesn't listen. She pushes Chloe away as if she were nothing, though Chloe manages to regain her balance and land perfectly on her feet. The students in the class are shocked by the exchange, while our boy just wants to leave. Rachel, a high-class student and the niece of the Spear Saint, lives by the clan's motto. Skills are useless in the face of overwhelming strength. Rachel then asks Kong if Chloe is his girlfriend. Kong quickly replies, no, but he can feel Chloe staring at him intensely. Despite the tension, our boy tells Rachel that Chloe is just his friend. In his mind, Kong wonders what kind of situation he's gotten into. As he looks around, he notices that Abel is there too, something he didn't realize at first because he was so frazzled. Kong, still trying to make sense of everything, asks, why did you and Abel come looking for me? Rachel, with a teasing grin, replies, well, it seems like Abel was interested in you and wanted to see your face. Flustered, Abel immediately denies it. When did I ever say that? She exclaims. Rachel responds with a playful smirk. Isn't that why you came here? Abel quickly corrects her. You're the one who practically dragged me here. Rachel shrugs. I just thought you wanted to see Kong. That's why you followed me. Abel, clearly embarrassed, retorts, that's not true. Meanwhile, the students in the class start whispering among themselves, wondering what's going on and why Abel and Rachel are arguing. Abel, now shyly and with a hint of frustration, says, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I didn't ask to come here to see Kong. Hearing this, our boy thinks to himself that Abel should just leave. He then states, if Abel and Rachel don't have anything else to do, then they should just go. Both Rachel and Abel are surprised by his bluntness. Rachel moves closer to Kong and says, you're really an interesting guy, and I like guys like you. Our boy replies, that's a relief to hear, but I'm far from interesting. Rachel playfully responds, don't be like that. How about we meet up after class and spend some time together? Angered, Chloe suddenly shouts, get away from my Kong right now. Hearing this, Rachel starts laughing, but Abel, equally frustrated, begins to emit a powerful aura. Sensing Abel's rising anger, Rachel smirks and says to Kong, it was fun meeting you. I'll see you later. Kong, trying to put an end to it, tells Rachel, don't come back. Rachel waves him off with a grin and replies, don't be so cold. As Abel and Rachel leave, Rachel lovingly says her goodbye to Kong, which only frustrates Chloe even more. Meanwhile, our boy just wishes he never has to see Rachel again. As Rachel leaves, Abel can't help but glance back at Kong before exiting. The scene then shifts to the corridor outside, where Rachel reflects to herself. It's one thing to have a cold attitude, but seeing Kong face to face, there was something there, she thinks. Kang's gaze had been unsettling, and Rachel realizes that he far exceeded her expectations. Kong is definitely a step above all the students I've seen since the school started, she muses. Initially, Rachel had gone to the tiger class just to tease, but now she believes she might have gained something unexpected. My clan pulls no stops when it comes to recognizing only the most outstanding warriors, she thinks. In that sense, Kong might be a valuable resource. It's only natural that he's caught the eye of the invincible Empress, she concludes with a cheerful smile. Rachel then turns to Abel and apologizes. Confused, Abel tells her, you should apologize to the tiger class students for causing that ruckus, not me. But Rachel replies, it's not about that. It's about Kong Jiama. She then adds, and I'm not going to yield. Abel is shocked to hear this, realizing that Rachel might be more serious about Kong than she had thought. The scene shifts to Nox, who is in the hospital recovering from his injuries. Anger courses through him as he contemplates killing Kong, having lived his entire life without experiencing defeat. As the genius of the Auditor family, Nox thinks to himself about taking care of Kong at night. The mere thought of Kong only fuels his rage, prompting him to rush toward his room. Nox intends to mobilize the entirety of the Auditor family with the authority of the entire clan. He believes he can deal with Kong easily. After handling Kong, he is confident that Chloe will return to the Auditor family as well, given that her potential is on par with, if not greater than, his own. Now is the time to strike, Nox thinks, envisioning the power of the House of Order combined with the pinnacle of his Nightfall techniques. He is determined to show Kong exactly what he is capable of. However, as Nox opens the door to his room, he is stunned to see our boy already sitting there, casually eating an apple. Seeing Nox, our boy states, "You're finally here."